Thank you for coming to my presentation. I especially want to thank Josh Farley for his faith in me, as he has supported me so much in the last decade to advance on the path to a master's degree. The presentation I gave in class was cramped and didn't flow very well, so this presentation includes material that I felt I needed and expresses better my reasoning and plans. I am too full of questions, and this presentation will be longer than 6 minutes. My research intends to build on the proposition that the overcrowded monoculture of humanity, the destruction of nature, and the poisoning of the atmosphere have exhausted nature's buffers, its resilience, and humanity will discover the costs in the collapse of industrial civilization. A short history of collapse. A topic of long-standing interest to scholars, with interest rising steadily since 1980. Early warnings that our industrial civilization was on a problematic pathway are Limits to Growth, first published in 1972 by Meadows, Randers, and Behrens. The Population Bomb by Ehrlich and Ehrlich in 1968, and Silent Spring by Carson in 1962. Since then, we have had increasingly dire warnings, summarized by Bernard et al., World Scientists, Warning into Action Local and Global 2021. Antonio Guterres told the delegates of the COP27 last month, and the clock is ticking. We are in the fight of our lives, and we are losing. The warnings were issued, and now the effects are being felt. Collapse blind. The leadership of the world cannot imagine the world in which petroleum is not burned, in which forests of the Amazon and Sumatra and elsewhere are not cut to grow food for humans, in which markets and profits are not still the central purpose of the economy, in which everyone is fed, in which everyone gets health care, in which everyone is educated, in which we stop dumping our poisons into nature, in which becoming wealthy is not the point, in which the wealth produced on this abundant earth is used to care for people and nature. The leadership of the world cannot grasp that their expectations is the problem. So what is collapse? Collapse is when the systems you rely on fail. When a pandemic overwhelms the healthcare infrastructure to the point that workers refuse to return to work, police cannot manage social disorder and stay home, when truckers refuse to drive, when food cannot be grown or delivered, when fuel isn't delivered, when electrical and internet services are interrupted or cease, this is collapse. This is a collapse. Local collapses are many and ongoing and affect people today. Subsystems can degrade and need not collapse completely or pervasively, but it is felt and deeply stressful. When a system collapses and degrades other systems around it, then collapse is partial but underway. Collapse is not necessarily abrupt. It can be gradual and it can be planned. Resilience and planning will reduce suffering and destruction. But when global governance, trade, communication, food production, and energy production, excuse me while I find my keys here. But when global governance, trade, communication, food production, and energy production, education, healthcare, police, military, and money fail, when hunger and mayhem prevail, civilization has collapsed. Why would a civilization collapse? Overshoot, for one. No habitat can sustain without external inputs more biomass than can be produced from the solar influx of energy. Because the solar influx is so diffuse, evolutionary participants co-evolve, developing and maintaining equilibria as a function of biophysical limitations. Fossil carbon provides a concentrated external energy source. Let me say that again. Fossil carbon provides a concentrated external energy source, which can be allocated to particular activities, allowing some members of humanity to exempt themselves from nature's constraints and equilibration. Thus, pollution, ecosystem destruction, and many more people than the solar influx can actually support in equilibrium. However, the stream of energy on which our civilization depends cannot be sustained. When the stream of non-renewables resources is exhausted, the fossil carbon ecosystem must collapse, and either descent or collapse of civilization are inevitable. Descent, parenthetically, is a field that anticipates collapse but engineers a soft landing, hoping to avoid the most dire effects. So, the human population must return to equilibrium within the ecosystem constraints, biotic demands, and solar influx of the Earth-Sun ecosystem to be sustainable in the long term. In the short term, industrial civilization cannot be sustained beyond peak oil, gas, and minerals. Its engineers and advocates will call for substitution and endeavor to squeeze every last crystal of molybdenum from the ocean floor, but each and every effort to do so destroys more natural habitat, more of nature's resilience buffers, and makes the eventual collapse more complete, more deadly, and more horrifying. Why would a civilization collapse? The maximum power principle. Exosomatic power, exosomatic teeth and claws, light speed transmission of voice over unlimited space, unconstrained travel, unconstrained accumulation. Technology externalizes unintended, actually unimagined consequences. Second and third order effects, Schmachtenberger 2022. Anyone observing the destruction of nature, the violence of humans against humans, and the stage setting for collapse might wonder, how did we get here? Where a source of energy is available over time sufficient for evolution to occur, a species or cultural innovation will evolve to exploit it. The maximum power principle operates at the margin, thus ignorant of its externalities. The maximum power principle explains the accelerating rate of change in technology, overshoot, and ecosystem destruction. The maximum power principle is exaggerated in its effect by superabundant cheap energy. Hagen's claims that the petroleum economy produces 500 billion energy slaves. Direct that through your externalities at the world. What is collapse and why do we care? This is the question. Okay, here. Thesis questions. I am the lemur. What is collapse and why do we care? What legacy of values, tools, education, cultural forms, relationships, and material preparation do we want to leave our descendants? And how will we help them prepare? And how will we do this in ways that are not neo-colonial, using our fossil carbon-derived privilege to exclude those outside of consciousness, but bring these strategies to those suffering the effects of collapse? How will the MPP operate on the downslope of the carbon surge? And how can its properties be used to reduce harm? Methods. Ontologies and epistemologies of collapse. Thus far, my investigation has been theoretical. I propose a direct review of literature to justify, explain, and detail the existing arguments. Broadly, I'm interested in the ontological and the epistemological, in fact, the cultural, how we construct reality, given empirically validated understandings and subjective perceptions of values, and what those constructions can correctly predict about the actions we might want to take. I still need to find a question that is unanswered in the literature, and a need for data collection may be found. I plan to use qualitative methods of the Delphi method or content analysis. I'm likely to use one. I plan to spend the spring semester reviewing literature, planning, and setting up my 2 studies. For example, a community that calls itself collapse aware has formed, and each of these methods could be used. Final word, internationalizing and the post-collapse academy. With an invitation from Pallav Das to write for Kalpavriks and Radical Ecological Democracy.org. I have cause to investigate India, their home base, and its many interesting potential case studies. I hope to begin to do some of this writing while I'm reviewing literature. Perhaps reading can be used as a stimulus to writing, and writing an appropriate stimulus to reading. One last word. You may already know this, but it is worth externalizing. The system that we use to produce knowledge, research, and scholarship is under attack and under stress, and is one of the systems subject to collapse. Your self-education, your reimagining of scholarship without rich laboratory budgets, without a vast library system, and your planning for a new scholarship could help preserve the knowledge that humanity has created for the use of our descendants as they try to build a new world. It's a job for all of us who treasure the vast accumulation of knowledge we now possess. These are just a short list of the books that I've read or have to read. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks for coming.